We believe that men can be powerful forces for good in their communities. The TruCoach podcast exists to equip coaches with the tools they need to prepare boys and young men for life.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to TruCoach. So today we thought we would break down some of how the TruCoach curriculum is designed. So TruCoach is a tool for coaches to take their teams, specifically the young men on their team, the boys on their team that they're coaching. It's a tool designed to help them move their team, move the players, the boys, through boyhood into manhood. So this curriculum is designed for boys, ages of 10 through till 25, through till they're, almost finished college. So one of the ways that we constructed this program was we built it around these three primary shifts. And these are shifts that have been identified by anthropologists, by people who've studied what's called men's work for many, many years. And so we've taken three of them. There's several shifts. We've taken three of what we feel are the most important ones, things that boys need to learn. They need to move from one side of this shift to the other before they, as they're on their journey to becoming men. So what we'll do is we'll introduce the shifts, and then we'll begin unpacking the very first shift. So the shifts that we have incorporated into our curriculum, and this is where all our lessons are based around each one of these shifts. The first one is from ease to difficulty. The second one is from self to others. And the third one is from control to surrender. So when we talk about, we're going to focus today on from ease to difficulty. And so you could sum that up by saying life is hard. We have to learn that life is hard. I think it's really, really helpful to say that we have to make a shift from ease to difficulty. And just a shout out to John Tyson, who wrote an amazing book that if you haven't read, you should read. It's called The Intentional Father. And so he actually takes another author's work a guy by the name of Richard Rohr, and he creates these shifts from Richard Rohr's work. So he's done a really amazing job of implementation. And so he talks about this shift from ease to difficulty. And so we'll break that down a little bit today. I would just start by saying one of the things that is very obvious if you spend any time around a boy, especially a younger boy, is that they seek comfort and ease. And so that's one of the reasons why kids and boys that like to watch TV, or they like to play computer games or video games or whatever. It's easy and it's comfortable. And then moving to the other side of that shift, difficulty is there's nothing wrong with resting and leisure. I think doing anything out of a place of rest, of confidence and assurance in yourself is good. And so coming at life from that perspective, men seek challenges. That's just what they do. They want to be pushed. They want to be challenged. They don't want things to be easy because they recognize they can't grow if things are easy. So difficulty just makes us disciplined. It makes us courageous. It helps us persevere. It makes us resilient. And difficulty, situated in the context of men who are helping guide you and push you into that, can be a really impactful journey through your adolescent years or your years as a young man in your early 20s. So that is, we'll kind of get into it. We'll get into it over the next 30, 40 minutes or so and go more in depth about what this shift means.
Mm-hmm. And I think one thing that's great about all of these shifts is there is a place where you are as a person, and then a place where you need to shift into. And that's so huge when you have a team, because it's really easy to recognize, if we're going to just keep on the track of shift 2, it's easy to recognize when the team wants to settle into easy and they aren't pushing themselves into difficulty. And then even during practice, or you can look at individuals on the team where that, hey, this kid, he would rather stay in easy, and this kid is okay to be pushed into difficulty. And even like I have 3 boys, and so they all have very different personalities, and Some of them can easily just chill out all day and be super comfortable and not do anything difficult that entire day, where others, they just hate sitting around and they hate not doing anything. And my youngest, the other day, we had this freak snowstorm in spring, and so we got like 5 inches of snow in about 25 minutes, and we're like, hey, you should go create a snowman. He's like, okay. And he will chill out and do nothing and just have everything super comfortable. But the moment he gets an opportunity to go try to build something or whatever, he will do it. So we're like, go make a snowman. And he's like, okay. And he just like throws his coat on, doesn't zip it up, puts on somebody else's boots, and then just runs outside with a crappy pair of mitts on. And he starts making this snowman, and he's just like a brute of a 6-year-old. So he's just manning these huge snowballs that he's managed to make really quickly. And then he puts these really big snowball on the bottom, another big snowball in the middle, and then like this tiny snowball for the head. So it looked hilarious. But then he like goes and finds rocks and twigs and makes the whole snowman. But then he runs back inside and asks for a hat that he can put on the snowman. And then so we give him a hat, and we're watching him through the window, and he's in such an intense hurry because he's hyper fixated on this thing. He doesn't care about anything else that's happening. He grabs the hat, runs outside, slams the door behind him, and he's running towards the snowman. But we can see as he's carrying this hat and he throws it on top of the snowman, he's crying in searing pain. We're like, what is going on with him? And he just he didn't really try to put the hat on the snowman nicely. He just kind of threw it on. And then he runs back inside, and he's just screaming in pain. Because when he had slammed the door to go put the hat on the snowman, his finger got caught in the door. But we didn't know, because to him, he's like, I have to finish this task at hand. Yeah. Even though I basically just tore off my fingernail. And so he runs 20 feet, puts the hat on, runs back, comes inside, and is just in like a wild amount of pain. So much so that this happened a couple days ago. His nail is black. And it's probably going to fall off. And if you've ever had that happen, it hurts so much. But there was 20 seconds where he was in searing pain, but he's like, I am going to push through this immense amount of difficulty just to finish what I started. And when I'm done, I'm going to seek comfort from my mom so she can hopefully make my finger feel better. But right now I have something to accomplish. And that's just one of the coolest things is in this little moment, I saw him. He was comfortable in the house. He went outside and did something that was hard. He got cold and made this snowman, but he didn't care because it was fun. So the difficulty at that moment didn't matter. But then he rips his fingernail off, more or less, and chooses to stay in difficulty for 25 more seconds just to finish, and then comes back in, and he has just this wild moment. And it was just so cool watching that shift happen in my 6-year-old in his own little crazy world.
Yeah, that's really cool. So he was totally focused and determined to accomplish his goal. Nothing was going to stop him from getting the hat on top of the snowman.
Yeah, and if that had happened to another one of my kids, it wouldn't have gone like that. Maybe they would have made the snowman, but then the moment that their finger got cramped in the door, the hat would have went flying, and they would have been crying for the next hour. Yeah. And it's so much even comes down to the individual too. And I think it could be so similar in sports, where some kids, they're just easy to push into that difficulty, but then each kid is so unique that I think as coaches, it's sort of our job to recognize when they're settling into easy, because it's going to happen to every kid.
Yeah.
And when to pull them out. And we spoke on the last episode about tending to that fire within, and that's being able to recognize okay, you're letting that fire die. I need to blow on it again as a coach to get those embers roaring again.
Yeah, that's it. I think part of it, like you talk about the differences in personality. So you might have some kids that are super determined, and other kids that are a little more emotional and sensitive. I think the kids who, at least from what I've seen, the kids who are not as sensitive will push through those things a little easier. The kids who are more sensitive will, in their emotions, the feeling of injustice at slamming your finger in the door is so intense that you can't like, how did this happen? Why did this happen to me?
Yeah. What is my life?
Yeah, and then somebody else is like, all right, this sucks. I got to do what I got to do, and then I'm going to deal with this issue that I have. But I think one of the big things is creating a culture. So, for the team that I coach, it's a U13 team. So these kids are 12 and 13 years old. They're all born in one calendar year in 2012. It's amazing how the size difference. We've got kids who are 6 feet tall and kids who are 4'8". So you've got, like nearing a foot and a half of difference.
Yeah.
And my son is one of the ones who's 4'8", and he's short, but he's really light. So you'll see him. He is like a bouncing ball. It bounces off some of the bigger guys, both on our team when we're in scrimmage and practice, and then on other teams. But I always tell him, you're not going to be this small forever. You're going to be, hopefully, and he's got a grandfather who's quite tall. He thinks he's got his genetics, so we'll see about that. But he's average height probably. But if you can learn to do this now, things balance out. Some of these kids are going to be tall adults. Most of them are going to be, some kids are done growing when they're 13 years old. They're not going to grow much taller. So I was just, I encourage him to be able to fight through that and put yourself in a position where you're not looking at your height as a disadvantage. It's actually an advantage, because you're going to learn how to persevere through this. And then when the playing field evens, the tall kids may not have learned that the same way. And so you're going to have that mental edge on them, and that edge in terms of pushing yourself. And there is a toughness component to it too. Smaller players, like in any sport, kind of have to be tougher. But yeah, I would say setting the culture on the team and kind of setting expectations and telling them we have a thing where it's effort is so important. And so if you watched the NCAA tournament, so they had Houston versus Florida in the finals. And so Houston, I didn't really care who won. Florida is a very talented team. They have probably arguably the best point guard in the country, and point guard being such an important position, they came back and won. But Houston, their whole identity is just scrappiness, toughness, and all-out effort. So there's clips of them practicing, and these are like grown, huge human beings. And a lot of them are in their early 20s, but they're doing these drills where they got 2 lines on the baseline, either side of the lane lines, and the coach is just throwing the ball in between the two of them, and they're fighting over it. And that's the drill. They just fight. They just wrestle each other over it.
Battle. Yeah.
Yeah. And so you see that that come through in their playing style, where it's just like they're diving for balls all over the place. They're just they're so tenacious and so intense. And so I think you can build that in your team over the course of a season. And if you have guys that are with you for more than one season, it gets easier and easier, because they just understand what your expectation is.
Yeah, and that's creating a good, healthy competition in practice, when you as the coach have full control of that environment. Because in a game, things are out of your control, but you can use practice to give it a game-like environment where you are going to be battling, but this time you're battling against your brother who's on your team. And yeah, that's big, because my oldest, he's 11, and he'll fight against kids on his team who are a foot shorter than him, because he's one of the bigger guys. But it's 2 years, so they're all born in 2014, 2015. And one of my favorite drills as a coach is to, you put the puck along the boards, and then you put each kid along the boards a few feet away from the puck facing each other. And then when you blow the whistle, they battle for that puck. Because hockey, it's a game against the boards. And you're teaching them to do that. And you can have kids who are a foot shorter who can win the battles because they know that, hey, I don't have the advantage of size and power here, but I can use what I have as the advantage. So they know it's going to be difficult already. Whereas sometimes the big guys, they're like, this will be easy. And then they'll lose because they chose not to go into difficulty thinking it would be easy.
Yeah, it's keeping them there. It's keeping them in that place of difficulty. And sometimes, honestly, as a coach, I show up and I'm like, I don't have a lot of energy that day for whatever reason. Like my work day took a lot from me or whatever it is I had to do before I showed up to coach. So the nice thing is I've got 2 other coaches who are able to carry that sometimes. So we had a really, I've never been a part of anything like this. We were playing on our playoff game, and we were in the quarterfinals. It's single elimination on Sunday and this past Sunday. And we're playing a team. We never played them before, so we didn't really know how to scout for them or anything. And so, we show up, we're just going to play our game. And this team is, I don't know what it's like in youth basketball in other parts of the world or other parts of North America. In Toronto, it must be, maybe it's the officials association, but they're kind of like, let's just get the game over. So games last an hour and a half at their longest. For teams that play really physical at this age, especially if they're not super athletic and can't move up and down the court, like a 16-year-old athlete,
yeah,
they're gonna foul a lot. There's teams that do like full court pressing the whole game. So if you think about that, you're sprinting up and down, up and down, up and down. You get tired and then you start dragging your feet and then you foul. So anyway, we were in this it was an absolute battle. Like I have never experienced. My son got like undercut, smoked his head off the floor, a huge bump on his head. And he had, so he had to sit out the game. I was sure he didn't end up having a concussion, but I was sure he did. We had 2 guys come off with like contusions in their thighs. We had kids coming off with scratches all over their faces and shoulders. And I'm like, what do I do in this situation? How do I? And the coach on the other end was probably like 20 years old, and he's just like, the term the kids use is crashing out. So he's like unhinged, screaming just the whole game, and he's on the court half the game, which is illegal. He's doing all these crazy things. So, and then the parents are acting like the coach, and the players are acting like the coach. They have that same kind of demeanor.
Yeah, the culture of the team.
Yeah, but it was like, you play hard, but if I don't teach my boys to play within the rules, I'm doing them a disservice. So this guy his team was just, they didn't understand how to move your feet and guard a player properly. So that's what happens at this age. You just get injuries when you don't have, the refs don't control it. So we were right there the whole game. We ended up losing because we were all, 3 of our guys were hurt. 2 of our best players were hurt. So it caught up to us eventually. But as a coach, I had the tendency is just to like, man, like how do we keep going here? Like this feels like it feels like we just stepped into World War III and we're at a youth basketball game. Like it just, these 2 things, the level of like ferocity, and just like I will hurt you to win. I will do whatever. And the refs are kind of hands off. Okay. So, but to keep them in difficulty that whole time was very challenging for me. Cause you could see we play hard. One of my things is physicality. We play intense. We play physical. We play tough. Coming from a hockey background, like that's an expectation that I have. But it was another level of like recklessness. And so I didn't really know what to do, but just to keep them in difficulty in that setting. It's not easy to do that. There's times when they're 12 and 13 years old. Like it's scary sometimes, right? Like it can be intimidating. So, but it's a lesson. It's a lesson. Like next time we face a team like that, we'll be better prepared.
Yeah, and that's one of the biggest things is being able to say to the kids, and even the team, to the parents after a game like that, like, this is an opportunity, we're learning things. But the one biggest thing that this shift does is, yes, like when these kids are playing a game like that, it is going to be very difficult and they're going to feel so stretched and just done. And then even as parents and as coaches with kids on the team, there's just this heightened level because it's your kid that's being thrown on the ground and they hit their head, and then you want to just like go and drop kick the kid or the parent whose kid that is, right? It's just, those are the emotions. But as the coach and a parent, it's your responsibility to like maintain control of yourself. And with the shift from easy to difficult, and one thing that we outline with TruCoach is there's certain values that shift is going to instill on your team, and that's going to help with discipline, it's going to help with courage, it's going to help them power through adversity. And that's the biggest thing, like when you're mentioning of like, well, we teach the kids to go hard and be difficult, but they're not dirty, they're not unhinged or out of control because of that discipline that they're learning. And like, I think that's pretty huge, because you're not, and again, going back to that fire, like that fire has to be tended and it can't be raging out of control. And that's where some of the discipline comes into play with your team.
Oh yeah. And you have to simulate it in practices. Like we'll have practices where it gets heated between our players, and I have to be careful as a coach that we have a value that when we're together in the gym, we're family. So there's a brotherhood. Yep. And so in brotherhood, there's this expectation that we're going to sharpen each other, but there's a balance between that sharpening, which is, we have a kid that joined our team this year from Taiwan. His dad's a professor at one of the universities here, and so the culture there is a little more passive. He's the tallest kid on our team, and then we have another kid who's a couple inches shorter than him, but very strong, and so we're always matching them up against each other in practice. And the taller kid, the kid from Taiwan, he was more passive at the beginning, and we've since drawn that, the fire out of him and the passion out of him for sure. But he was, the first 2 months of practice, you could see he was just like, is this what basketball is? Like, I have to battle for every inch of court against this guy. He is not giving me like, if I go in the post, he's right there and he's pushing me out. He's not letting me get there. And that's the whole, so he would get heated. He would get like, he'd turn on and just shove the guy. And kind of like, maybe throw an elbow or two. And so, and then they would start going at each other. So as coaches, you're sort of watching, like, we want this because we know that it simulates a real game situation. And if we can be more prepared for that, and at the same time, you guys got to understand that you could get heated for a second, but then you got to remember he's your brother and you got to take care of him. And you do want to go hard on him, because it shows your commitment to the team, your commitment to the principles we've instituted, in practices, our culture of hard work and competing and physicality and toughness and all those things. But you're stopping. We always want to be respectful, like even against an opponent. If I come back and I'm coming back on a fast break and I foul my opponent who's going up for a layup, and he falls down, I'm going to help him up. I'm not, so there's this balance of like drying that fire out, but then the hard thing is like, okay, we've got the fire out now and we want to feed it. We want to keep it at a good, high heat, consistent level, but we also don't want to let it spread and engulf everything. And so you kind of like, you talked about the differences in personality. I think that's what I'm learning is, how do I help each individual player steward their fire so that it burns hot, but not so hot that it causes damage and chaos. to either their teammates or to their opponents. And so the team we played on Sunday, it's a great example of the fire totally out of control. And so I think that's a good way to frame it is there's fire, get it out, keep it hot, but watch it and help the boys learn. I'll even teach them like breathing techniques to calm their nervous systems when they're upset. Even, talk to them about crying, why it's okay to cry, how tears release stress hormones, all these things just to help them manage their emotions it's good that the emotions come up. Yeah.
The one thing that it can be so big about trying to identify each kid is, you have bench staff. That's what it's called in hockey. I'm not sure what it is in other sports, but the people, your assistant coaches, your trainers, like you have all of these coaches essentially under one common goal, which is led by the head coach. And that's where getting these shifts from TruCoach could be so important, because you want all of your bench staff, all of the people on the team to understand, okay, this shift from ease to difficult, this is what we are doing. And what that looks like is it's calling out the fire, the power of these kids, but it has to be managed. And for one person on the bench staff to manage that for all of the kids, that's not possible, because just simply even just the chemistry you have with different kids on the team is going to change, and you might not be able to connect with that kid as much as the assistant coach or the trainer. And so that's something that's super important, is communicating to all of the coaches on what you're doing so that you can recognize, like, okay, like I think I'm best at talking to this kid, or you're best at talking to this kid, or this guy's sick of hearing what I've been telling him for the last 2 months. Let's get a different voice in here, especially with dads on the bench. Sometimes it's way better to just let one of the other coaches to deal with your kid, because as a coach, it's your job to treat your own son on the team the same as all of the other kids. But it can be hard because they don't treat you the same as the other coaches. They give you way more attitude and way more emotion, but you can't do that. You have to set the environment for your kid and for the team. And yeah, I think that's one of the biggest things, is just making sure that all of the shifts, and specifically from ease to difficult, is communicated to everybody on the bench so that they can kind of find that one common goal and then go after it together, which will then form that respect in the team and all of those other values that are instilled under that shift.
Yeah. Do you want to talk, like, we've got 5 principles that we've implemented as part of this shift. Do you want to even just like run through those?
Yeah,
quickly?
Definitely. The first one would be, like, don't let your team slip into easy. Like, we want to keep them into difficult. Like, that's a huge one. Which that sort of looks like you want to set an expectation in each practice that you're going to give 100% effort all of the time. Like, that is the normal. You want to make sure the team maintains like good mental focus and to avoid distractions while they're on the ice. And that's something that, as a coach, because it's way different doing that with a 10-year-old and a 16-year-old. Like, it's just it's a different animal. But the idea is that every year you have this shift working with these kids. They get a little bit better and a little bit better. And we talked about that leash too. Like, that leash gets a little bit shorter and shorter as a coach. And every time you see the team or the individual, and whenever they slip into easy, you can have a consequence. And again, that changes on age group, and that's stuff that we'll be jumping into. But like, we've even skated our 11-year-olds just like back and forth width of the ice a whole bunch of times, and we don't do it a ton. And our head coach for the 11-year-olds, he was really good at just like not bag skating them, because that doesn't really work with 11-year-olds. You could do it a little bit, but then it's not good. One kid actually puked. We're like, but it's apparently a thing that he does, which was funny. And then the second would be like, and we spoke about this, creating healthy competition in practice. But I think like healthy competition, because iron sharpens iron, right? And you want the teammates to compete hard against one another. And that's, you know, as coaches, we're not going to tell you what drills to do, but we want you to use these shifts as a filter when you're picking your drills. So like, where does this competitive drill fit into? That fits into from easy to difficult, because I can use that moment to help control or pull out that fire in that competitive part of the practice.
Yeah.
And then,
so just to one of the things there is, like you're saying, creating competition. Every drill, make it a competition. So whatever you're doing, try and keep score, try and make it where it's competitive, so that there's extra incentive and extra motivation.
and it's fun.
And it's fun. It's more fun that way. Yeah. It's like, you know, so we haven't done it lately because we're coming towards the end of our season, but I'll do conditioning competitions where I'll have, you know, different conditioning drills. I'll pair the boys up. So it'll be like 6 groups, and they'll have to do a series of conditioning drills, and then they have to finish 5 free throws each at the end, and whoever gets done first wins. And so there'll be like a consequence, you know, if you win, maybe you don't have to do push-ups at the end, or maybe you don't have to run a suicide at the end. And the cool thing is that the winning team now, they'll, like, in solidarity with their teammates, they'll do the thing at the end that the losing teams have to do.
Right.
So they'll just go and do it now, which is cool, because and even like we do this thing where it's just the mental focus, right? Like we have the kids' shoes coming undone all the time. Like you tie your shoe up once, and then you know it comes undone 5 minutes later, and then again, and we're always 10 push-ups every time your shoe comes untied. And so the team will join in when one kid is doing his 10. Everybody sees him. Oh, he's okay. We should let's get down and do 10 push-ups too. So that's been a cool, but that comes from that, like, my experience in pushing them and having them push each other is that I was afraid that they would start to dislike me. And that's one of the things that's important for me, is protecting the trust. So I don't ever want to do anything as a coach. I'll be intense. I'll raise my voice sometimes, but I don't ever want to do anything that will damage the trust. And if I ever feel like I did anything, I'm always quick to go and talk it out with whoever it was, and even just apologize if I've done something that even if it's just a little thing, just because I want to make sure that there's a good level of trust there. I forget where I was going with that. What was I talking about previously?
Well, we're talking about sort of finding the team's edge and how the kids can join in. And what it reminds me of is there were some times where we skated these kids, and it's difficult and you can't get around that. So as a coach, there were some times where I did the skate with them to show them that, like, I too am willing to go into difficulty. Like, I'm right here with you doing it, because I'm just as much as part of this team as you. And like, I was tired, and like I was beating them and I was yelling at them because I completely demoed my knee a year and a half ago, broke the patella into a whole bunch of pieces. And so I'm like, you guys are letting this guy with 1.5 knees beat you, you know, but I'm just like wrestling them at the same time, but also like getting down on their level. Like I'm not standing on the bench yelling at them. You know what I mean? Which is such an important thing to do, and that maintains that trust that you're talking about.
Yeah, that's huge, knowing that. I mean, even like some of the most successful coaches ever, I mean, there's different approaches. Like some coaches, I watched the documentary about the Patriots, the New England Patriots and their dynasty, and it seemed like their coach, Bill Belichick, was just kind of vicious, and his way of drawing potential out of players was to kind of be cruel and mock them, which it kind of to me, after I saw that, I was like, good players make good coaches, because like Tom Brady, you know, best quarterback of all time. I don't really follow the NFL all that much, but you know, the coach, I'm like, I don't know how you could be a coach for that long. And I guess they're professionals and they're getting paid a lot, and so maybe they put up with a bit more. But I know in the basketball world, like guys like Phil Jackson, Steve Kerr, these guys really prioritize making sure their players know they love them. And so that's a huge thing, that your players know that you love them, that you care about them, that you find different ways to communicate that, different ways to kind of like embody that for them. And especially when they're kids, because they need to feel safe, like we talked about, safe, not comfortable. Yeah. If they feel safe, then if they feel safe, they're going to embrace discomfort more likely. They're gonna be okay with being pushed a little harder. And so that's what we talk about, finding your team's edge, the trust, the love, that they instinctively know that they can trust you and that you love them. You can push them a little harder then, because it's not like oh, I don't know if this is good for me, or there's this trust. Hey, we know this works. We've been with this guy. He's he's always been there for us. He's always been able to help guide us and teach us, and so the biggest thing for me is just like the relationship with the players. Above anything.
That's number one, because if you don't have that trust, and if the players don't know that you love them, then you're gonna have a very difficult time making a difference on that team. So under the shift from easy to difficulty, the first one is don't let your team slip into easy, keep them in difficulty. Number 2 is create healthy competition in practices. Number 3 is find your team's edge. And then number 4 is find the high watermark and hold your team accountable. And that one's huge too, because like when something becomes easy for one of your top players, you make it harder for them and for everybody else, because you have a wide range of skill, especially like you don't so much do that in say like house league where it's more for fun, but once you get into the more competitive leagues, like you're going to have top players, and for the players who are more on the bottom, you're like, hey, that's your example. You're going to go there, but then each individual has their own apex, their own top that they go at. And so that's a big thing. It's like you don't want to cater to the middle players or the bottom players. You need to cater to the top player while working on the apex or the potential of each player on the team.
Yeah, that's a huge it's a strategy to help develop your player's skill and ability. So and you'll see like leaders emerge through that too. A lot of times hopefully some of the top players are strong leaders, and you can kind of use them to help bring your team together. But there's like this, it's almost an instinctual thing when you get to know your players, where you can see what their high water mark is. So in a practice, I can see when they're kind of firing on all cylinders, when the passes are crisp, when they're playing good defense, when they're moving on offense, when they're transitioning the ball quickly and running back on D. All these things I can see. And then when it's not happening, that's how this ties in back into finding their high water mark. If it's not there, if you don't have an image of what it looks like when your team has their high water mark, so have that image. And then if it's not there, okay, we've got to get them back into it somehow. We've got to get them back to that high water mark, and we've got to keep them there for as much of the time that they're playing, whether it's in practices or in games. We have to keep them at that high water mark as much as possible, and it's a consistency. It takes time, and then it changes every year. You're at U13 or U14 levels, whatever. Every year, that high water mark is going to be there's going to be a little higher. There's the competition gets better. The older the boys get, the more players will fall off and stop playing, and so the talent pool condenses, and so you're getting better players. So the kids who've played, from whatever 9 or 10 years old, if they're still playing at that age, they're usually some of the better players. So it just changes every year. It's the high water mark gets a little bit higher, but
Yeah.
it's just creating that accountability, and you could even communicate it to your team and say, this is what it looks like when we play the way that we want to play. So for my team, it starts with defense, it's rebounding, it's transitioning the ball, it's being physical, it's being fearless. When we play that way, we're going to be fine. We could compete with anybody. But if we let off in one of those areas, then you're going to see it on the court. You're going to see it. It's going to cost us points. It's going to cost us, it's going to cost us games. So I think that's get that idea of what that high water mark is, have that image, and continue to remind your players and hold them accountable to it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And then the fifth one is create accountability structures. And so specifically, you can create them for school and respect at home. Now, I know this is something that I think coaches should be sensitive to, depending on the age of the kids and the level of play, because it can be 13-year-olds, but it can be house league, or it can be, I don't know what it is in basketball, but in hockey, it would be AAA. That's the highest form that you can play. So I, as a coach, would expect more discipline from my players when they are playing rep or AAA hockey, more so than house league. But more specifically, like in house league, I'm not going to worry about how they're doing at school. But if they're in AAA and they're slipping at school, like that's something that I think needs to be communicated with the parents, and something that needs to be determined based on the team too, because not everybody would feel that that's important. But it's about the idea of creating an accountability structure that is all rooted in the from easy to difficult shift.
Yeah. The schoolwork piece is a big one. Like I had a parent come up to me on Sunday and say, it's his kid's first year with our team, and he said, we have a brief spring league as well. So we play from, basically, it's such a long season, from September to April, and then from May to like early July. So it's really just a 2-month season. And he wasn't sure if he was going to sign his son up for the spring league. And he's like, the reason I did is because he's so different now about his schoolwork, because I told him that if he didn't do his homework, he couldn't go to practice. And so now he gets home and he opens his bag and he goes and does his schoolwork right away. Even if it's not due for 2 weeks, he just gets it done.
Yeah.
And I didn't actually say anything. And there's probably some boys who need to be reminded a little more. And I know my son's like that. I have to remind him a little more. But just the way that you can use that as school is not everything, but it's an important part of your childhood, and it's important that you learn how to be accountable and responsible, even if you don't love it. So most boys don't really love school. Mm-hmm. They might say they dislike it. They even dislike it. But it's like,
strongly dislike.
Yeah, like but can you do something you don't like and do it adequately enough that you're successful at it? So there's these different mechanisms that you can use, accountability, to hold them accountable in other areas of their life, and even to go so far as to say, hey, to some of the parents, like, we're going to do this next year when they get to grade 8, and say, like, if there's anything happening at home that if you're struggling in any way at home with stuff like that, your son is being disrespectful, or there's issues you're having at home, and you feel comfortable sharing them with the coaches, we can implement things in his involvement in the team to help keep him accountable. And we can talk to him as coaches. They're getting into grade 8, so all the hormones and the puberty starts to kick in. So it's helpful to have that community of accountability around too.
Yeah, definitely. And that's one of the most, I think, unique parts about TruCoach, is that they have all these shifts, but things adjust slightly depending on age or level of play. So there's so many different layers that can be sort of customized and catered to your unique situation. And it just really comes down to, like, as the leader of this team, like, I want to implement these shifts. I want the team to function through them. And so, we're gonna wrap it up, and just as a reminder, and we're going to be like touching on these shifts a lot, and we're going to have individual episodes about the shifts and even multiple episodes, because we could dive in so much deeper from ease to difficult, but we're just trying to keep it really simple for now. So like the first shift from ease to difficult, we spoke about that. You got to create competition and practice. And then the next shift is from self to others. That's helping the kids persevere and push through. It's not all about them. The team is at the forefront. There's a brotherhood. And then the third would be from control to surrender. A lot of things in life happens that you cannot control, and sometimes you have to learn to surrender. So we're gonna be jumping into these shifts in future episodes, and really looking forward to it.
Thank you for listening to the TruCoach podcast. Boys need good men to help lead them through adversity. Youth sports serve as a forum for life lessons, and coaches must be prepared to help them prosper both in sports and in life.